Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of March. So March, I feel like I've had a really good reading month. Preface this, I've read quite a few things, I've read quite a lot of good quality things. It's been a really good reading month. It also feels as though March has gone on for a very long time. Like I feel as though it has been the longest month ever, which is fine, but I don't know how I've managed to fit everything into this month. So in total in March, I read 8 books coming to 3,672 pages. 6 of the books were fantasy, 1 was a romance and 1 was a historical mystery. 7 of the books were adult, 1 was YA. And then for my star ratings, these were all relatively positive. So I think I've got 1 5-star, 1 4.5 star, 5 4 stars and 1 3 star. So only one that I was a bit like, lukewarm on, but everything else, and the 4 stars, they were all like really good, like very strong 4 stars, like 4 to 4.5, like really, like I was really enjoying everything that I was reading. In terms of my series, I started 2 series and then I continued in 4 series. I didn't finish any, but I did a lot of progress. I did a lot of continuing on in things and like continuing on in different series. So I did really well there, which puts me on the go, I think, at 27. So some good progress on the series and putting me in a very good place to finish lots of things off soon-ish. I would say in April, but in April my target is to read Rhythm of War, so I don't really want to overcommit myself. And in terms of what I got up to, I'd say you could really see it as like a month of 2 halves, but in both halves there was a lot of traveling and lots of things going on. So in the first half of the month I went on holiday, and that's where I managed to read like I read like 3.5 books whilst I was on holiday. So I went on holiday to Jamaica and just did a lot of reading, a lot of relaxing, a lot of just enjoying not working. But we did a couple of non-relaxing things, like we went to these waterfalls, we went to Bob Marley like hometown mausoleum, which was quite cool up in the mountains in Jamaica. So did some bits and pieces and I did a lot of reading. So the first things that I read, and the first one that I actually started and read quite a bit of in February but finished on the first day of March, was Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. And then I also read the sequel, Children of Fallen Gods. So these were both read whilst on holiday. This one I started before I left for holiday, and then I did a lot of it on the plane. I did a lot of this on the plane ride before finishing like the final, I think it was under 100 pages on the first day when we arrived, and then I read this whole thing when we were there. So this series is a fantasy romance, but I'd say it's much more a fantasy than a romance, and that's where the strong points are for me, is in the fantasy. It's called the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. It's all published. I do have the 3rd book. I did not get to that. I did not get to that one. And so in this, we're following our main character, Tizana, and at the beginning of the book, she is trying to buy her freedom, and she has been in slavery for many years. And things go a little bit awry with that her master does not want to release her despite her having the funds to buy herself. So things go a little bit awry, but she ends up journeying to this other land where she knows that there is magic, and she has magic, but she doesn't really know how to use it. She's just been training herself through her life. And so she gets to this place and starts getting mentored by our love interest, Max, who's quite broody, quite moody, doesn't really want to be involved with anybody, doesn't want to be around people, but training in her magic. And then there's a lot more going on in this world with different wars and factions and different politics at play. Oh yeah, we're mostly following Tizana as she is training in this magic and her desire to go back to where she has come from and free everyone else from slavery and give them the life that she feels that they deserve and kill anyone that has wronged her. And so I'd say between these first 2 books that the fantasy elements are definitely like the strong elements in this series, that the romance is good and it's quite sweet, but it's not got like loads and loads of tension. So I wouldn't say there's loads and loads of like tension and angst in the romance, and so I wasn't necessarily like reading it really for the romance. I was reading it more for like the fantastical elements in this. So I'd say if you do enjoy like a fantasy with a romantic subplot, this is probably a really good series and doesn't lean so much on the romance like some other fantasy romance series. I'd say I've not enjoyed these quite as much as the Serpent and the Wings of Night books, the other series that Carissa Broadbent is currently writing, but I do think these are really well polished and I do really enjoy her writing style. I find it very easy to read, very compulsively like addictive. Yeah, I'm always really engaged. I've been very much enjoying everything Carissa Broadbent, but that other series I'd say is more like a 5-star series, and this was more like a strong 4. Very, very strong 4, but still a 4. I mean, I'll see how the third book wraps up, and I've only heard good things about that. I've been really enjoying these and really enjoying seeing the like tension and drama that our characters are going through, because our characters definitely go through a lot. They have not had the easiest of times at all. Excited to continue on with this. One of the other books that I read whilst I was away was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is a contemporary romance standalone, so I put this one in between those 2 books to sort of try and break it up a little bit. And in this one, it's set in a hospital. We're following our main character, Brianna, and she is training, or she's been working at this hospital for many years, and she wants to have the senior position that she knows is about to become available. And our male love interest is called Jacob, and he has recently transferred to this hospital from another one and is sort of seen as her competition to be getting in this position. And so there's that sort of miscommunication in the beginning as they settle into their roles within this hospital environment, but they start sending cute notes back and forth to each other, which I really enjoyed that as a setup and theme. I enjoyed our 2 characters and seeing what they'd gone through. They both had like previous relationships which hadn't ended that well, and there's like a fake dating trope in here, so I found this really fun. I do find Abby Jimenez really fun to read, or her books are really fun to read, so I would definitely recommend this. I think I preferred Part of Your World to this one. They're set in the same town, so they do have some crossover with characters, so I did prefer that one. I just feel as though there was a trope used right at the end of this which I didn't enjoy. I won't mention it, but I didn't really enjoy that. I don't feel like it was needed. I feel as though we could have had the 3rd act drama without it. I was like, oh, really? Like, that was the thing that deducted it. Like, it was going so well, so well, and then there was just this moment at the end that really dipped for me. Otherwise, it was really, really strong. Just that little annoying thing at the end. And then the book that I started on holiday, but then finished when I got back, was A Treacherous Curse by Deanna Raybourn, the 3rd book in the Veronica Speedwell series. So in this series, we're following Veronica, who is I don't think I can say the word, lepidopterist. She's a butterfly catcher, and it's set in like the Victorian times, and she is quite an independent woman and doesn't really follow societal norms. And in the first book, her aunts who have raised her have both died of natural causes, and she finds herself alone and suddenly embroiled in this like mystery case that's going on, a mystery murder case, and she finds herself at the centre of it alongside the character called Stoker. And we follow them through the series, and in this 3rd book there are different mysteries per book, and this one is sort of an Egyptian inspired mystery case that they are investigating with the curse of this mummy. So I continue to really enjoy these. They're really fun and easy to like read and get into, and I'm enjoying seeing like the individual cases, so it's quite like easy to dip in and out, quite episodic, but then there is like overarching things that are continuing on through each of the books, and seeing like the relationships develop, and you know there's more going on besides just the plot that they're investigating within each book. So really excited to continue on in this series, hopefully in April, we'll see. But yes, enjoyed this one. Okay, so that was like the first half of the month, first chunk of the month, where I read all of those whilst on holiday, so that was all quite positive, all quite fast. I was like, we are reading all these things. And then as expected, I knew that I would slow down a little bit into the second half of the month, but I actually did keep up a really good momentum, I would say, going into the second half. So in the second half of the month, I had 1 week at home, and then I had 2 weeks of travelling for work. So I'm now feeling a little bit exhausted from too much journeying around, and I need some stability and home time. Very privileged that I do get to travel so much and go to such beautiful destinations for my job and get paid for it, but I'm very happy to be home right now. I'm very happy to be home for a good couple of weeks. So in that time, I did actually manage to do some good reading on these trips, which is surprising because I don't normally, but because I was completely by myself, I did manage to do a reasonable amount of reading in the evenings there. I went to Andorra and I went to France. On those trips, I focused on 2 sequels. So in the first week, I read A Queen of Thieves and Chaos by K.A. Tucker. This is the 3rd book in the A Fate of Wrath and Flame series, which is a fantasy romance. And in this series, we're following our main character, Ramiria, and she comes from New York, as in our world, New York. And in the first book, she gets sucked into this portal fantasy world where she's in the body of someone who has just killed the king and queen. And so she is charged with this murder, although she knows nothing about it, and is like, I did not do this. I have no idea what's going on here. Why is there like magic? I could just come from New York. We're following her adjusting to this world and her relationship with the new king of this world. I would say I really liked the first book. The second book I still enjoyed, but there was a lot of journeying in it and lots of traveling, which made it feel a little bit fillery, whereas this one it was back to what I really enjoyed. I really liked the development with our characters and seeing their relationships grow. I liked how multi-perspective this was. It was already, I think, multi-perspective in the first book, but there's a lot more perspectives in this one. There's lots more going on, and we see different parts of the world with these different viewpoints, and I think that really worked for me and helped me like keep my engagement going in this series, because I do find that my interest can wane when fantasy romance, and when romance is such a strong plot when they get together. And so I felt having all these different perspectives and all these different things going on helped me maintain my interest, and seeing different relationships as well. So I think that was really well done. I'm definitely very intrigued to see what happens with the fourth book and see which is the final book in this series and see how it all concludes, because I feel as though this built to a really good point, and now we're at like a good point to see like the climax and the conclusion of the series and see how it all unfolds. Like it's left a lot open for that fourth book, and a lot of things that we've been like building towards over the series that you could really see how it was all like tying together into this big event. When I look for the fourth book online, they don't have it in hardback. They just seem to be selling it straight into paperback. Why would you release a third one in hardback if you're not going to release the fourth one in hardback? And my series already doesn't match because I've got the first two in self-pub. So what is going on here? And then in the second trip, the one that I've literally just been on, I read another sequel. So, you know, as you can see, I did really well with reading sequels this month. Some of them were series that I'd like recently started, and some of them are some series that I started last year. So I've done quite well with like continuing on with things. So I read The Battle Drum by Zara El Arifi. I know like in my April TBR, I was thinking, well, maybe this would be in April, but actually I decided to pick this up for this final week in March. But yeah, this is the sequel to The Final Strife, which I really enjoyed, and I'm really happy to say that the sequel lived up. The sequel like matched, I'd say, my enjoyment of The Final Strife, so they're both, I'd say, like 4.5 stars. Really good, really strong, really strong sequel. Does a very good job at like continuing this series. So The Final Strife is a multi-perspective fantasy story set in this world called the Empire, and in this world there are three blood types. There are the red bloods who rule the society. They have power, they have control, and they have access to magic. Then you have the blue bloods, which are more looked down upon. They do more of the menial tasks, they are out in the fields, they're more of the servants. And then you have the clear bloods that are really looked down upon, have no value in society, and hundreds of years ago they tried to rebel, and because of that now all of the clear bloods have their hands cut off and their tongues cut out so that they cannot form another rebellion. We join this world, these sets of trials that are about to happen to name the next like rulers of society, with the knowledge that 12 years ago there has been a swap of some red bloods and blue bloods. So the red-blooded children are being raised as blue bloods to understand the trials that they go through, to hopefully go into positions of power and then correct society. That's how it all starts and kicks off. I do find it's got such an interesting one. I think the world building in this and the law and the politics is so interesting. That's one of its real strengths. Such a strength is that law of the world, and that continues into here. Like we get a much more expansion of the world. We see our characters going through different things. I definitely enjoyed the multiple perspectives in this and exploring what each of the characters are going through, and they're all in very different locations, I would say. Now I think it was really well paced. Like I was always engaged. I was always interested in seeing what the characters were going through. I think because of the multiple perspectives it works that you want to get back to, or I want to get back to each character. I don't have a favourite. I was always happy reading pretty much all of the perspectives in this. There was one like new character who at first I was like, I just don't really understand what you're doing here, but I'm sort of interested. I find like whatever you're doing quite interesting, but who are you? But I think this was really well done. There's some little bits of confusion I have, which is why I would dock that like half star. That I think the explanation, because the ending of this we do get sort of some of our questions answered, but I don't know if I was just a bit tired when I was reading it, but I was like, have I understood that correctly? Have I understood that correctly? So I think that could have been a little bit clearer, the way that it all like came together. And all of that explanation. But otherwise, I think it was really well done, and I'm very excited to see how she wraps up this trilogy and how it all concludes. And for me, reading this now, it made me realise like how much more I enjoy this series compared to Feybound, which I read in January, which I still think Feybound was good, but I do not think it compares to this series. I think this series is definitely stronger. I think maybe because the focus of this series is more on the politics, the world building, the lore, and it does have romance, but it's not at the forefront, whereas Feybound, there was much more romantic plot at the forefront. So I don't know, I just feel as though she writes politics and lore and world building so much stronger than romance. Anyway, really loved this. And then for some other odd bits and pieces that I read, I did read Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. This is like 1.5 in the Enchantment of Ravens. No, Sorcery of Thorns in Sorcery of Thorns. And I'd say this just reads like an extended epilogue. It was cozy, it was fine, it was cute, but it didn't really do much for me. That it did just feel like an extended epilogue, that we just got to see these characters living their life generally pretty happily. There wasn't like loads of stakes in it. It just was quite, you know, a cozy fun time, which is why this was my like 3-star. Like, it was fine, it was enjoyable whilst I read it, but I don't see it having any lasting effect on me. It's not going to stay with me, it's not going to go much further than that I enjoyed it, but it was fine. Maybe if I'd read this closer to when I read Sorcery of Thorns, which was quite a few years ago, then I might have had more of an attachment to it, that I'd forgotten loads of details from that. I remember vaguely the main characters, vague details of the plot, and I did love that book when I read it. I did really, really enjoy it, but maybe if I'd read that more recently, then I would have had more of a connection to this and more of a, oh, this is so fun to see these characters living their lives and being happy. And I'd say this is only really worth reading if you really enjoyed Sorcery of Thorns. If you were lukewarm on Sorcery of Thorns, this is not going to do it for you, I don't think, because why would you want to keep reading about the characters that you were lukewarm on? I do have one more book to talk about, and I've saved my favourite book till last. This book I read the week when I was just at home in London, not travelling, and it just called out to me from my bookshelf, so I read it. I mean, I think I've put it on like a 5-star predictions or books series that I do want to start this year, so it wasn't a surprise entry really into my reading. I just don't think I've necessarily planned it for March, but it called out to me. I read it and I really, really loved it. I really, really loved it. And that was Dreamer's Pool by Juliette Marillier. This is the first book in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. So I knew I liked Juliette Marillier. So I knew going into this, I was going in with like, I had quite high expectations from really liking Daughter of the Forest, which is another series that I read by her. But it just really worked for me. It just really worked for me. This story starts in a prison, and we meet Blackthorn and we meet Grimm in this prison. And we don't know like that much about them. We just know that they've been locked up, and Blackthorn is due to either face her execution or her trial in the morning, until a fey creature comes along and says, strike a deal with me. I will release you from this prison, but you need to not seek vengeance for 7 years and go north and reside in this town for 7 years, healing people and doing good. And if someone asks for your help, you have to obey. Otherwise, I will add a year to the sentence, and if you break the rules 5 times, then you will be locked back up. And that is the deal that she gets granted with. And so we follow them on this journey. There's a very sort of fairy tale-esque feel to this whole thing. We've got another character perspective that we follow called Oren, who is the prince up in the north of the world. You know that it's set in Ireland as well. It's like a very Irish medieval setting. And then, yeah, there's also sort of fairy tale, whimsical elements to it. And whilst they're there, they're sort of investigating a mystery. I would say with Juliette Marillier's books, they're not fast-paced, but I am still addicted to them. Like, I am still turning the pages, despite it not being like addictive writing. It's not fast-paced. It's not like cliffhanger after cliffhanger. It's not like on the edge of my seat, but I am still like, I have to keep reading this. I have to know what's going to happen. I did sort of guess some of the elements to this like mystery, this fairy tale like mystery that they're investigating, but I was hooked. I was just hooked. I feel as though she does such a good job with like world building, setting up this world that you can imagine, and with the characters that you can really feel for our characters, feel their emotions, feel what the struggles that they have gone through and are going through, and the trials that they have faced, because Blackthorn and Grimm, they've both had quite hard lives, and they've not had the easiest time. That is also a thing with Juliet Mario's books, is that she does not shy away from harsh, hard truths, hard parts of life and things that nobody would ever really want to experience. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I would recommend it, especially if you read like Daughter of the Forest and enjoyed that, then I think you should definitely read this series. And the thing that I'm enjoying about this series as well is that it is it does continue into 3 books. That with Daughter of the Forest, it became a multi-generational series, and that each book followed another person within that family, whereas this is, you do continue in book 2 with Blackthorn and Grimm, and seeing what they're going through. So I would really recommend this, especially if you don't mind slightly slower pacing, although I still have found it very addictive to read. So would really recommend. And I am currently reading book 2, Tower of Thorns. So this was what I am currently reading going into April, and I am 100 pages into the 400-page book, making some good progress on this series, and just look out for my thoughts on this one in April. So those are all of the things that I've read in the month of March. So I feel as though I had a really good month of reading, a really good month in general, with lots of things. But overall, just a really successful month. Like, I feel as though I read a lot, lots of good quality books, just lots of things that I enjoyed and had a lot of fun with. Let me know your thoughts if you've read any of these and your favourite book that you read in the month of March. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!